Holy Saturday, the eve of the Holy Resurrection. At the close of the Sabbath, John, Peter, and James the Greater visited the holy women, to mourn with them and to console them. On their departure, the holy women enveloped themselves again in their mourning mantles, and retired to pray in the recesses strewn with ashes. I saw an angel appear to the Blessed Virgin. He announced to her that the Lord was near, and bade her to go out to the little gate belonging to Nicodemus. At these words, Mary's heart was filled with joy. Without saying a word to the holy women, wrapped in her mantle, she hastened to the gate in the city wall through which she had come on her return from the garden of the tomb. It may have been almost 9 o'clock when, in a solitary place near the gate, I saw the Blessed Virgin suddenly halt in her hurried walk. She gazed as if ravished with joyous longing up at the top of the wall. Floating down toward her in the midst of a great multitude of the souls of the ancient patriarchs, I saw the most holy soul of Jesus, resplendent with light and without trace of wound. Turning to the patriarchs and pointing to the Blessed Virgin, he uttered the words, "Mary, my mother," and appeared to embrace her. Then he vanished. The Blessed Virgin sank on her knees and kissed the ground upon which she had stood. She left the impress of her knees and feet upon the stone. Inexpressibly consoled, she hurried back to the women, whom she found busied preparing ointment and spices on a table. She did not tell them what had happened, but she consoled and strengthened them in faith. The table at which the holy women were standing had an under support with crossed feet, something like a dresser, and it was covered with a cloth that hung down to the floor. I saw lying on it bunches of all kinds of herbs mixed and put in order, little flasks of ointment and nard water, and several flowers growing in pots, among which I remember one, a striped iris, or lily. The women packed them all in linen cloths. During Mary's absence, Magdalene, Mary Cleophas, Johanna Chusa, and Mary Salome went to the city to buy all these things. They wanted to go early next morning to scatter them over the body of Jesus in its winding sheet and pour upon it the perfumed water. I saw a part of it brought by the disciples from the dealer and left at the house without their going in to speak to the women. After that I had a glimpse of Joseph of Arimathea praying in his prison cell. Suddenly the cell shone with light, and Joseph heard his name pronounced. I saw the roof raised just where the cornice joined it to the wall, and a radiant figure letting down a strip of linen that reminded me of one of those in which the body of Jesus had been wrapped. The figure commanded Joseph to climb up by holding on to it. Then I saw Joseph grasp the linen with both hands and, supporting his feet on the projecting stones of the wall, climb to the opening, a distance of about 12 feet. The roof immediately resumed its position when Joseph reached it, and the apparition disappeared. I do not know whether it was the Lord himself or an angel that released him. I saw him running unnoticed a short distance along the city wall to the neighborhood of the Coenaculum, which was situated near the south wall of Sion. He climbed down and knocked at the door. The disciples were assembled with closed doors. They were very sorrowful over Joseph's disappearance, for they credited the report that he had been thrown into a sewer. When they opened the door and he entered, their joy was as great as that which they experienced later on when Peter, freed from his prison, appeared before them. Joseph told them all about the apparition he had had. They were greatly rejoiced and consoled by his account. They gave him food and thanked God. He left Jerusalem that night and fled to Arimathea, his native place, where he remained until he received news that he might return to Jerusalem without fear of danger. After the close of the Sabbath, I saw Caiaphas and some other high priests in the house of Nicodemus, to whom, with an air of assumed benevolence, they were putting many questions. I do not now remember what subject they were discussing, but Nicodemus remained true and firm in his defense of the Lord, and so they parted. All was quiet and silent around the Holy Sepulchre. About 7 guards were in front and around it, some sitting, others standing. The whole day long Cassius maintained his stand inside the sepulchre at the entrance of the tomb proper, leaving it scarcely for a few moments. He was still absorbed in recollection. He was in expectation of something that he knew was going to happen, for extraordinary grace and light had been vouchsafed to him. It was night. The lanterns before the tomb shed a dazzling light. I saw the sacred body wrapped in its winding sheet just as it had been laid on the stone couch. It was surrounded by a brilliant light and, since the burial, 2 angels had in rapt adoration guarded the sacred remains, one at the head, the other at the foot. They looked like priests. Their whole attitude, their arms crossed on their breast, reminded me of the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, excepting that they had no wings. The whole tomb, and especially the resting place of the Lord, reminded me in a striking manner of the Ark of the Covenant at different periods of its history. The light and the presence of the angels may have been in some degree visible to Cassius, and it may have been on that account that he stood gazing so fixedly at the closed doors of the tomb, like one adoring the most blessed sacrament. And now I saw the blessed soul of Jesus floating with the released spirits of the ancient patriarchs through the rock into the tomb, and showing them all the marks of ill treatment upon his martyrized body. The linen bands and winding sheet seemed to have been removed, for I saw the sacred body full of wounds. And it seemed as if, in some mysterious way, the indwelling divinity displayed before the souls the blessed body in the whole extent of its cruel laceration and martyrdom. It appeared to me perfectly transparent, its inmost parts disclosed to the eye. Its wounds, its sufferings, its pains could be seen even to their very depths. The souls gazed in mute reverence. They appeared to be sobbing and weeping with compassion. My next vision was so mysterious that I cannot relate the whole of it in an intelligible manner. It was as if the soul of Jesus, though without restoring the sacred body to life by a perfect union with it, was transported in and with the body from the tomb. The 2 adoring angels raised the tortured body, not in an upright position, but just as it lay in the tomb, and floated with it up to heaven. The rock trembled as they passed through. Then it seemed to me that Jesus, between countless choirs of adoring angels ranged on either hand, presented his wounded body before the throne of his heavenly Father. Jesus' body seemed to have been resuscitated in a manner similar to that in which those of many of the prophets had been assumed by their souls after the death of Jesus and taken into the temple. They were not really alive, nor did they have again to die, for they were laid down by their souls without any forcible separation from each other. I saw that the souls of the ancient patriarchs did not accompany the Lord's body to heaven. I remarked a trembling in the rock of the sepulchre. 4 of the guards had gone to the city to get something. The 3 others fell to the ground unconscious. They ascribed the shock to an earthquake, but knew nothing of the cause. Cassius, however, was very much agitated and frightened, for he had a clear view of what had happened without fully understanding it. He kept to his post, and with great devotion awaited what would next take place. Meanwhile the absent soldiers returned. When the spices were prepared and packed in linen cloths ready to be taken to the tomb, the holy women again retired to their recesses and lay down on their couches to rest, because they wanted to start before daylight for Jesus' tomb. They had more than once expressed their anxiety as to the success of their design. They were full of dread lest the enemies of Jesus might waylay them when they went out. But the Blessed Virgin consoled them. She bade them take some rest and then go courageously to the tomb, for no harm would befall them. And so they went to rest. It was about 11 o'clock at night when the Blessed Virgin, moved by love and ardent desire, could no longer remain in the house. She rose, wrapped herself in a grey mantle, and went out alone. I thought, how can they allow that Blessed Mother, so full of sorrow and alarm, to go out alone under such circumstances? I saw her going sadly to the house of Caiaphas, and then to Pilate's palace, which was a long way back into the city. And thus she traversed alone the whole way passed over by Jesus bearing his cross. She went through the deserted streets, and paused at every spot upon which some special suffering or outrage had befallen the Lord. She looked like one seeking something lost. She frequently knelt down, felt around on the stones with her hand, and touched her lips to them, as if reverently touching and kissing something sacred, namely, the blood of Jesus. She beheld around her everything sanctified by contact with Jesus bright and shining, and her soul was entirely lost in love and adoration. She went on until she approached Mount Calvary, when she stood quite still. It was as if the apparition of Jesus with his sacred, martyred body stepped before her. One angel preceded him, the 2 adoring angels of the tomb were at his side, and a multitude of released souls followed him. He seemed not to walk, but looked like a corpse floating along, environed with light. I heard a voice proceeding from him, which related to his mother what he had done in limbo. Now, he continued, he was about to come forth from the tomb alive, in a glorified body, and he bade her await him near Mount Calvary, on the stone upon which he had fallen. Then I saw the apparition going to the city, and the Blessed Virgin kneeling and praying on the spot indicated by the Lord. It may now have been past 12 o'clock, for Mary had spent a considerable time in the way of the cross. Then I saw the Lord's procession going over the whole of the same dolorous way. In a mysterious manner, the angels gathered up all the sacred substance, the flesh and the blood, that had been torn from Jesus during his passion. I saw that the nailing to the cross, the raising of the same, the opening of the sacred side, the taking down from the cross, and the preparing of the holy body for burial, were shown to the souls in Jesus' train. The Blessed Virgin also saw it all in spirit. She loved and adored. Afterward it was as if the Lord's body rested again in the Holy Sepulchre. With it was all that had been torn from it during the Passion and replaced in an incomprehensible manner by the angels. I saw it as before, wrapped in the funereal bands and winding sheet, environed with dazzling splendor, the two adoring angels at the head and the foot of the tomb. When the morning sky began to clear with a streak of white light, I saw Magdalene, Mary Cleophas, Johanna Chusa, and Salome, enveloped in mantles, leaving their abode near the conaculum. They carried the spices packed in linen cloths, and one of them had a lighted lantern. They kept all hidden under their mantles. The spices consisted of fresh flowers for strewing over the sacred body, and also of express sap, essences, and oils for pouring over it. The holy women walked anxiously to the little gate belonging to Nicodemus,